Hello and welcome to this screencast on the cardiovascular system. Okay, we're specifically looking at revision as we have now kind of gone through the cardiovascular unit. So therefore I thought I'll develop this screencast for you to try and help you with regards to your mocks and then also your final exams later on next year. So this is going to comprise of some fill in the gaps, some exam questions and just a bit of recap really. So if you complete this at your own rate, that would be really good. So I'm going to ask you to pause, etc. at certain points. So first of all, we're going to start with the composition of blood. So here I've just got a few kind of prompts to what makes up the composition of blood. If you can get it down without using this, fantastic. If not, use it to help you. So if you just pause this and try and get down the composition of blood. Okay, so hopefully now you've unpaused and you have got plasma, which makes up 55% of blood. You've got red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes. You don't really need to know the percentages there, but you've got that. And then you've got platelets, and then also white blood cells. I'm not going to go into too much detail about these because we're going to go through them during this screencast. So, composition of blood. Now, before I put anything on the screen, can you give me more information regarding plasma, regarding red blood cells, white blood cells and platelets? So what I want you to do is potentially describe what they are and the function of each. Try that now, so pause it. If you've struggled with that, you've got these or this fill in the gaps to help you out. So again, pause this, write this out, go through the fill in the gaps, try and fill them in. So give it a pause. Okay, so hopefully now we are back and we're going to go through these answers. So the composition of blood, we have got plasma is a yellow substance and makes up 55% of blood and 90% of that is water. Now remember, plasma kind of transports, for want of a better word, it just transports things around the body for us. Okay, so different kind of various substances really. So we have like proteins, glucose, amino acids, carbon dioxide, oxygen, urea, all sorts get kind of carried through our plasma. So that's plasma. And we've got red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes. Now the main function of erythrocytes is to carry oxygen and carbon dioxide. Now we are going to come back to red blood cells a bit later on during this screencast. Then we have white blood cells, also known as leukocytes. And we have neutrophils, which are B-type cells, produce antibodies and help prevent infection, help engulf microorganisms, okay, something important to remember. Lymphocytes, T-type cells, destroy viruses and cancer cells. Monocytes, remove dead cells and antibacteria. And then also we have platelets that help with blood clotting. So that is the composition of blood. So what we're going to do now is move on to the functions of blood. Before I go forward on this, can you pause this and think of the functions of the blood? If you remember, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, we've got 5 functions of blood that we need to know. Can we just identify them and write them down first of all? If you're struggling with that, hopefully this will help you out. So see if you can remember from that if you pause it now, because I'm going to go through the answers. So what we have is transport, temperature regulation, exchange of materials with body tissues, preventing infection and blood clotting. Okay, so if we're talking specifically now, or we're concentrating specifically on the function of transport, okay, so what I want to do is explain how the structure of red blood cells help transport oxygen around the body. Don't mind if this is in bullet point form for this revision. So can you kind of think back to transport, and specifically can you think back to the structure of red blood cells which help transport oxygen around the body? Pause it, give it a go. If you're struggling with this, I'm now going to show you a fill in the blanks that might kind of engage the memory for you to give it a go. So this is the feature of red blood cells, and this is the reason as to why it helps transport oxygen around the body. Give that a go, pause it. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the answers of this. So first of all, we have got, they're a small size, okay, so this lets red blood cells pass through narrow capillaries for gaseous exchange to take place. They are also a flattened disc shape. Now this means that they have a large surface area so that we have oxygen being able to be diffused easily and readily from oxygen, okay, and then massive, we've got hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein, and this is where oxygen kind of attaches. Okay, so we have oxyhemoglobin. So red blood cells contain hemoglobin. Hemoglobin specifically is what carries oxygen. And finally, it doesn't contain a nucleus, so it increases the amount of space inside the cell for hemoglobin. So there's loads of room for hemoglobin to occupy a red blood cell. So that is to do with transport as a function. Another function that may come up in an exam that is quite important to know about is temperature regulation. So again, can you explain to me how the function of blood, so how blood regulates our temperature? Now, the only hint I'm going to give you so far here is when we are hot, something happens, and when we're cold, something else happens. When we're hot, something happens to help cool us down. When we're cold, something happens to help us warm up. Can you give it a go? So pause this, give it a go and see how you get on. Again, if this eludes you and you really can't remember, if you're sitting there now just thinking, I'm just going to wait for him to go through and fill in the blanks or something, please pause it and really test yourself and see if you can remember. Okay, so I'm going to go through the kind of fill in the blanks now. So you also have this available to you. So when we are hot, our blood vessels do something which brings the vessel closer to the something of the something, which allows heat to something from the surface of the skin. And when we are cold, the opposite happens. So our blood vessels taking the blood from the skin so that less away. So can you give that a go, fill in the blanks? Again, pause it because I'm going to go through the answers now. So what we should have is when we are hot, our blood vessels vasodilate. Remember, that is when they widen. So our blood vessels widen. This brings the blood vessels closer to the surface of our skin, which means that heat can radiate from the surface of the skin. I've put in brackets here as well that we do sweat. So when we sweat, that sweat evaporates from the surface of the skin. So that's really important. Remember, it's our blood that actually gets hot. When we're cold, the opposite happens. Our blood vessels vasoconstrict. Remember I said something about a boa constrictor snake squeezes its prey, so our blood vessels squeeze and they narrow. This takes the blood further away from the surface of the skin so that less heat radiates away. So our blood vessels vasoconstrict and go towards our vital organs as opposed to going to the surface of the skin, so radiation can happen, or heat can radiate off. So that is temperature regulation. So what I'd like you to do now is, using the key terms on your right hand side, obviously there's more than you need, I want you to complete the description about the composition and functions of blood. So pause it and write out your answer. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the answer you should have. The main component of blood is called plasma. It consists mostly of water and it helps in the temperature regulation of the body. Red blood cells are also known as erythrocytes and are responsible for transporting oxygen and carbon dioxide. White blood cells help to prevent infection, for example, neutrophils, which help engulf microorganisms. Platelets can be described as cell fragments that are responsible for blood clotting. Now, this was an actual exam question. So this was an exam question in one of a previous exam. I don't know if it's going to be on your mocks or not. I kind of hope not, because I've given it you here. So, but that is the type of question that you could be expected to answer. So we're going to go on now. So we've done composition of blood, we've done functions of blood. I want to quickly now just concentrate on lymph. What I want you to do is, can you just give that a go? 4 marks, describe how blood plasma becomes tissue, fluid and lymph. Before you answer it, if you're struggling with this, look over your notes, look over them, learn them, close them, give this a go from memory. Don't just copy your notes and write this out. If after looking at your notes you're still struggling now, I'm going to go through and fill in the gaps that will help you out. So this is a fill in the gaps that may help you out with regards to answering that question. So the question was, describe how blood plasma becomes tissue, fluid and lymph. Here's the fill in the blanks that would help you out with that question. So pause it. Okay, so here you go, and this is the answer. So blood plasma in capillaries forced out through leaky capillary walls by hydrostatic pressure. That's pressure from the heart pumping. Fluid carries nutrient oxygen to the cells of the tissue, which now it's known as tissue fluid. This fluid must return to the circulatory system, otherwise edema occurs, which obviously edema can be fatal. Majority of fluid returns to the capillaries. Remaining fluid, the 10%, drains into the lymph vessels. This rejoins blood system near the top of the body, and the fact that it rejoins the blood means that we keep our blood volume levels consistent and high. Otherwise we'll just lose our blood volumes, and that would be fatal as well. Structure of the heart. Okay, so what you might have to do on this, because you won't have a word document of this in front of you, you can start here at the top work your way clockwise, 1, 2, however many there are, and see if you can remember them all. So write them down. Don't use your notes. Please do this from memory. If you have your notes, do this from memory. If there's any you're struggling on, look at your notes. Start the whole process again. So do it from scratch, this time with no notes, and give that a go. So your answers, I'm not going to go through them all because there's loads. Your job is just to pause it. Make sure you've got the right answers. Remember, in lesson we went through the structure of the the function of these, i.e. what they do. Remember, it's really important to always consider where these structures receive blood from and where they send blood to. For example, the right atrium, if someone asked you what is the function of the right atrium, the function of the right atrium is to receive deoxygenated blood from the vena cava and to force blood through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. That would be the function of the right atrium. Similarly, the function of the left ventricle is to receive oxygenated blood from the left atrium when it's forced through the bicuspid valve, and to force blood to the rest of the body through the semilunar valve and the aorta. So make sure you can do this yourself now. You can remember the pathway of blood through the heart and think, right, okay, I'm going to do that for every single one of these, and that may help you out. Okay, moving on. So, blood vessels. Can you now identify the 5 different types of blood vessels found in the body? Give it a go. There are 3 main ones and then there are 2 other ones. So give it a go. Pause it. Okay, so if you're back, you may have done it already or you may be struggling. So what you can have is this to help you out. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a clue, a bit of an inkling to, yes, I remember what the blood vessels are now. What you should have are arteries, arterioles, which are smaller versions of arteries. Then we have capillaries. And then from capillaries we have venules, and then we have veins. As I have said, there are 3 main blood vessels really: arteries, capillaries, veins. Can you please have a go at describing them? Describing the structure and the function. Give that a go from memory. If you're struggling from memory, I'm just going to skip forward and we've got another fill in the gaps to help you out. As you can see, I've left the arterioles and venules without any filling in the gaps. It's important to know them, but the main questions you are going to get asked would be on arteries, capillaries and veins, and specifically you may be asked to know the difference in an exam. You may be asked to know the difference between arteries and veins. And as I said to you in lesson, if you know the structure and the function of an artery, for example, you kind of flip that around and reverse everything. You've got a vein. The only extra thing you must know about a vein is it has pocket valves to prevent the backflow of blood. I've just given you the answer for pocket valves there, my bad. So, answers we should have. Voila, there we go. Make sure you've got the correct answers. Again, this isn't just a process of just quickly going through this. This is a process of, okay, I didn't get any of these for blood vessels, therefore this is something I really do need to focus on and revise to help me, not just with my mocks, but my overall exam next year. Conduction system of the heart. So, we've gone through composition of blood, function of blood, lymph, heart structure. Now we're looking at the conduction system of the heart. Can you remember the 4 structures that are to do with the conduction system of the heart? And if you can you test yourself further and describe each of the structures and its function? Or just give some information regarding each structure. Again, if this is something that is really kind of like you can't remember at all, I'm going to go on to a next slide and go through the answers. So pause this if you want to give this a go. Continue to have it playing if you want to see or you need some help. Hopefully that helps you out and you're thinking, yes, I do remember this. Now, in an exam you can refer to this as the SA node, so it kind of gives a bit away, but can you actually remember what it stands for? And similarly, you can actually call this the AV node, but again, can you actually remember what it stands for? Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you've filled them in, can you give a bit of information about this SA node? Where is it located? Where does it send? What it sends to? And so on. And for each one. Okay, pause if you want to give that a go, so I'm moving on. So for SA node, located in the right atrial walls, the SA node generates its own electrical impulse and it fires it through the atrial walls, causing them to contract, and it passes the impulse onto the atrioventricular node, where this collects the impulse from the SA node and delays it for approximately 0.1 seconds to allow the atria to finish contracting so that all blood can be forced into the ventricles. This passes the impulse onto the bundle of His, which is located in the septum of the heart. The bundle of His splits into two, ready to distribute through each separate ventricle, i.e. right ventricle, left ventricle. Remember, when we look at a heart, it's backwards, okay, like looking in a mirror. Purkinje fibres, these distribute the impulse through the ventricle walls, causing them to contract. So we have a muscular contraction, a heart contraction. We can force blood to the lungs, we can force blood around the body. So, going into a bit more detail now, we've gone from conduction system, we have to know about the cardiac cycle. So the cardiac cycle refers to the heart contracting and relaxing. And can you just identify the two key terms associated with the cardiac cycle? So what do we call it when the heart contracts, and what do we call it when the heart relaxes? Pause this, because I'm going through the answers. So, we have two key terms, but we actually come across them both in different times twice. So we've got four altogether. So we've got AD, VD, AS, VS. So this is obviously the scientific name for filling. So when the heart is relaxed and filling with blood, we've got atrial diastole. Then remember, atrial diastole, blood passively drips into the ventricles, which causes ventricular diastole. And the emptying start, or the emptying phase, I should say, is atrial systole, when the atrial walls contract, and then we have eventually ventricular systole, which is when the ventricle walls contract. Now, it is your job, it's your responsibility, it's your role to understand the conduction system and the cardiac cycle as one key thing, which we're going to go on to after this exam question. So, answer this exam question, or pause it, answer it. Hopefully you've paused it, because now I'm going to go on with the answers. So we have got the answers there. Please pause this and get down the answers if you got them incorrect. Okay, so hopefully you've unpaused now and you can see that, or you should know again if you struggled with one of these aspects, whether or not it was the function of this A node or whether it was to do with systole and diastole, the cardiac cycle. Something you've got to revise in more detail using flashcards. Don't just read your notes and highlight. Please, please, please don't do that. So, explain how the conduction system controls the cardiac cycle. Pause. Give it a go. If not, got a little hint for you. Fill, impulse, empty, impulse, 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 empty. Fill, impulse, empty, impulse, 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 empty. Does that kind of give you... Ah, yes, I remember now. Pause it, give it a go. Okay, so now we're back. We're going to go through the answers. So fill, we have atrial diastole, the atria filled with blood. Then remember, we have ventricular diastole, ventricles passively filled with blood due to the pressure of the blood filling the atrium. Fill, impulse. First impulse is the SA node. SA node initiates an electrical impulse which causes the atrial walls to contract. When they empty, it is known as atrial systole. So this causes atrial systole, where the blood empties from the atrium into the ventricles. Then we've got impulse. Remember that the SA node fires its electrical impulse to the AV node. So the AV node receives the impulse from the SA node, allowing the atria to finish contracting, 0.1 seconds. Bundle of His splits it into two. The impulse is then received by the Purkinje fibres in the ventricle walls, causing the ventricles to contract. And then finally we have got ventricular systole. This is when blood empties from the ventricles to the lungs to get oxygenated, and to the body, where it is oxygenated to the body so that the muscles can get oxygen. Moving on, hypertension. So we're getting through quite a lot at the moment. I said pretty much going through the whole of the cardiovascular system. Hypertension and coronary heart disease we've done most recently. Therefore, with regards to these two, this is going to be really brief. So, Kevin has been suffering from hypertension. What does the term hypertension mean? Can we describe it a different way? That's worth 1 mark. And then also after that, give yourself a bit of time. Evaluate the possible lifestyle changes Kevin could make to treat his hypertension. This is worth 6 marks. Pause it. Hopefully you've paused this. Now we're going to go through the answer. You should have given yourself a good 10 minutes there. 7 minutes minimum, 10 minutes maximum really. So let's go through the answers. Hypertension means high blood pressure. Simple as. No other way of describing it. Let's not get overcomplicated with it. High blood pressure. Now, with regards to that evaluation question, so evaluate the possible lifestyle changes Kevin could make to treat his hypertension. This is the mark scheme. This is the main thing we want to be looking at here. So hopefully you've potentially mentioned changes in diet, changes in exercise routine, changes in social activities, changes in lifestyle routine. Please read these for descriptions in terms of what they've actually kind of put as an acceptable answer. And then you've got different levels here. So if you just pause this and kind of like give this a read, and if this confuses you or anything and you really want me to answer a few questions on this, feel free to contact me. Okay, so coronary heart disease, last couple now guys, so thank you for bearing with me. We have got identified 3 causes of coronary heart disease. There are loads out there, all I want is 3. Hopefully you've paused this and you give me the answer. So what we are looking for is increasing age, genes, high blood pressure, smoking, alcohol, high dietary salt intake, high fat diet, high cholesterol, obesity, stress, and lack of physical activity. Okay, so they're more than 3 causes. I only wanted 3 causes of coronary heart disease. So what is atherosclerosis, or what is atheroma? So can you give that a go? There's no fill in the blanks for this one because we've done it so recently. I'm just firing at you. What is atherosclerosis? Can we remember? Pause it. Okay, answer. So the answer is when fatty deposits or plaque build up on the artery walls, causing them to narrow. Now remember that atherosclerosis or atheroma can cause angina, but what is angina? Can you describe angina to me just with some keywords? Pause it. Hopefully your keywords you have got or things you've got written down is neck, jaw, arm pain, breathlessness, nausea, dizziness. Okay, so it's a condition arising when less oxygen gets delivered to the heart muscle. You've got to think our coronary artery walls are narrow, which means they're getting less oxygen to them. This less oxygen causes pain, neck pain, jaw pain, arm pain, breathlessness, nausea. Okay, so that is atherosclerosis and angina. CHD monitoring. So name one method of monitoring CHD. We've gone through 2 in lesson, but can you just name one of them? Pause it. Okay, so if you've named more than one, fantastic. Hopefully you have got angiogram and blood tests. If you can describe angiogram, that would be fantastic. Without your notes, just check it with your notes. I haven't got the answer on here. I guess I can quickly actually go through what an angiogram is. So if you haven't written your answer yet, pause because I'm just about to go through the answer. So an angiogram is it's a type of X-ray that involves a dye which is visible in X-ray photographs. So the dye is injected into the blood system so that narrowing of the coronary arteries can be seen. So remember that picture we saw in the video, or that video I should say, the X-rays where you could really see the narrowing of those arteries, coronary arteries, with regards to the dye getting pumped into the artery walls. Okay, so coronary heart disease treatments. So describe 2 coronary heart disease treatments. Let's say you've had your angiogram. Angiogram has come back, you have got narrow arteries. What can we do? What 2 things could we potentially do in this situation? Pause it, give it a go. I want you to describe these as well. I don't want you just to identify them. I want you to then, once you've identified them, I want you to actually tell me what they are. If you're struggling to tell me what they are, these are what they are. An angioplasty and a coronary bypass. So now, can you describe them for me? Pause it because I'm going to go through the answers. So what we should have for an angioplasty is a microscopic deflated balloon is passed into the narrowed artery and inflated to push it open. So sometimes a microscopic mesh tube called a stent is inserted to keep the artery open. This allows blood flow to flow through the artery, feeding the kind of heart, which means hopefully you're going to have reduced angina. Coronary bypass is a lot more invasive, okay, so using a piece of artery taken from somewhere else in the body, this artery is sewn from pretty much like the aorta to the part of the artery just to bypass the blocked area or that blocked coronary artery. This allows blood flow beyond the blockage. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that's everything I've got with regards to your cardiovascular revision. Obviously, we've done more in lesson. This was just a really quick whistle-stop tour of cardiovascular system and just things to get you thinking of the type of information you're going to be revising, and also you've seen some typical exam questions there that shows how exam questions are written and how they want you to answer them. Hopefully that's helped, and I'll see you next time I see you. Thank you. Bye.